So a lot of people are talking about violence and gun control and school shootings and stuff like that, which is completely understandable. I mean, after all, if you look at the statistics and you read them the way you want to read them, there have been 5 school shootings per day, per capita in the United States since Trump got elected. Now that is staggering and completely unacceptable. I could not stay silent any longer because this is too important, and as we know, it is time that we take action. So this is an action right here that I'm taking. All right, so from what I understand, there are 2 sides to this issue. One side is a group of people who want to take all guns away from everyone. The other side is a group of people who want to give every single person in the country a gun, from infants to old people even. There's really no room for nuance between these 2 issues. You're either on one side or the other, which is what really scares me because I'm not exactly sure where I stand on the issue, and I really need to take a side really quickly here. I hate to say this, and I realize this is probably the unpardonable sin, but I kind of see both sides. I think everybody would agree it would be awesome if people just didn't do bad things, if people weren't bad people. We could just kind of snap our fingers and say, don't be bad. Everyone understands that that's not something that we can do. So, this one group of people, let's put them on the left side for no particular reason. There are people who are advocating to make it harder for people to get guns, you know, and then cross your fingers that hopefully, logically, if it's harder to get guns, that means that it's harder for bad people to get guns. I know I'm being a little hyperbolic whenever I say that they want everybody to not have guns. Of course, they want somebody to have guns because what's the first thing people do whenever they find themselves in one of these extremely sad and unfortunate circumstances?
911, what's your emergency?
Oh my God, there's an active shooter. Please send one of your employees over here with a gun to stop it right now, please. Unfortunately, typically by that point, it's too late. Despite all the money that goes into training the police force, one lone gunman is just a little too much for Officer McFriendly to handle. It's just that impenetrable force that stops any cop from actually doing something. You don't believe me on that? I sound like I'm being a jerk about police officers. Columbine. Took nearly 2 hours before the police actually entered the school, as they all hung out around the school, fired bullets at the school, only to find the shooters already dead and several victims who had bled to death while the cops waited outside. You know, because you gotta keep cops safe. Pulse nightclub. The police finally went into the club 3 hours after the shooting stopped, but you know, this time they weren't doing nothing. They played around with some of their cool cop toys, setting off several bombs as a failed attempt to get into the club before finally breaking in by crashing one of these things through a brick wall. Stoneman Douglas shooting. They didn't even catch the shooter until an hour and a half after he had left the school. Despite the fact that the FBI had warnings about the shooter, there were police officers and security cameras on the school grounds inside of a government school. And this just did, while I'm editing this, I find out that the officer who was at the school who was supposed to be taking care of the kids stayed outside even though he heard gunfire. Even with the Sandy Hook shooting, which had a super fast response time from the cops, the shooting was already over and the shooter was dead before the cops even got to him. So that brings us to the other side of the issue, which is people who are suggesting that maybe we should arm and train teachers. That way there are good guys with guns in the school already without having to make a phone call. They can put a stop to it. Instead of these teachers jumping in front of bullets and just being target practice, they could actually do something. I totally get the hesitation with that. There are some wacko teachers out there. We hear stories in the news all the time, way more often than mass shootings, teachers who are sleeping with their students, abusing them, manipulating them. Some of these teachers seem borderline school shooters themselves. I mean, I'd trust them with the brains of my kids during their most formidable years for hours a day, but not with a gun in their hand, come on. So here's my suggestion. Take it or leave it. Maybe this will help the narrative. Instead of training teachers to do the complicated, nuanced job that police people have to do, why don't we train police officers to do what teachers do? We take Officer McFriendly and teach him to teach. We just make it a division of the police department. I mean, we're already paying police officers. They can replace all of the teachers that we have right now. It will make us super secure, which is what people are asking for. They want security, and we might actually save some money. Now, I know what you might be saying. Kevin, isn't that gonna lower the quality of education? But like, have you seen the global educational rankings? The United States is far from the top. I think we've got some wiggle room there to experiment. I think the only real issue that I could see is that most of these school shooters are white, so cops might not fire back.